Let us pray. May the words of my mouth and meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, loving God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Prophets are not without honour, except in their hometown and among their own kin. I've lived in Brisbane all my life, so I guess I can call it my hometown. It's a pretty nice place to be. I know a lot of people around Brisbane. My immediate family all live here. It's where I went to school and university. My kids have grown up here. I even still live in the same suburb where I went to high school, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, and only 2 suburbs away where I grew up as a child. I feel safe and comfortable here. And while there's always ways in which we still need to be vigilant in life generally, like you can't leave your doors unlocked at night, neighbours are generally nice and things are generally quite predictable and peaceful. There's that whole north-south divide, though, that we all have to be mindful of, don't we? But I wonder what comes to your mind when you think of your hometown. Is it a space of comfort and peace and safety? Is it a place of community, of welcome and inclusion? Or is it maybe very different to those things? We will all have our own different experiences of what hometown means for us. And I wonder about Jesus' sense of hometown, because today it appears quite challenging. And I wonder what Jesus' hometown would have been like when he was growing up. I imagine it to be a tight-knit, closer circle, a place where everyone knows everyone, where there was a strong reliance upon each other for day-to-day needs, perhaps a really strong sense of community, of mutuality and collaboration that extended beyond the family unit. Of course, we can't know this, we can only speculate this stuff, and we only really have the passage in Luke in chapter 2, verses 41 to 52, which gives us any insights into the way Jesus grew up. So as a reminder, that's the story when Jesus was 12 and they were travelling back to Nazareth from Jerusalem after the Passover. And Mary and Joseph thought that Jesus was with the group, but he remained behind in the temple debating with the teachers. And in that story, Mary and Joseph assumed he was safely among the broader group of hometown travellers, and that included families and friends. They travelled for a whole day, though, before they realised Jesus was missing. So he was certainly part of the community, and he was thought to be safe amongst that community, even though he was really disrupting his parents' sense of peace. But this passage in Luke ends with a verse that says, "And Jesus increased in wisdom and in years, and in divine and human favour." So we could conclude that he was accepted, included, and welcomed as a hometown boy. But fast forward to this scene here in Mark, and Jesus has been on the road so far. He's been travelling around Galilee, getting some strong momentum in building his ministry and doing healings. His authority has been building through his teaching and healings, and he's actually becoming a little bit famous at this point in the story. So now he's decided to take his ministry and mission to the people in his hometown, the people he thought would accept him the most. But in arriving in his hometown, among the people that he receives, the people who know him best, the reactions are mixed. Some are astounded by his teaching, amazed at his wisdom and his deeds of power. It's all the miracles and the healings he's performing and they're hearing about. But yet there are some who are really not overly impressed. In fact, they take offence at him. So I think we see Jesus is being quite courageous in our reading today. At any point, Jesus could have turned around likely knowing what he was going to walk into. And he could have turned around and not gone to Nazareth, the place where he grew up, his hometown. He would have known it wasn't going to be easy, and he could have taken the safe and comfortable option to avoid it. But that's not Jesus. He didn't turn back from Jerusalem on his way to the cross. And his ministry is for all and everyone. He could not turn away from what he would face in his hometown just because it would be a bit awkward and uncomfortable. Prophets are not without honour except in their hometown and among their own kin. So Jesus is presented as a prophet. He is not yet named the Messiah until that happens in chapter 8 in Mark, when Peter announces him as Messiah. So at this moment, he is a prophet. But prophets are not necessarily known to be harmonious and compliant. Quite the contrary. They are often seen to challenge and unsettle and disrupt the people that they are interacting with. They seek to provoke others towards change, to get them to see the world differently. We could think of Moses when he threw down the tablets and broke them because they were worshipping the calf. Or Jeremiah. In that reading, you can, not little baby Jeremiah, of course, but Jeremiah, you would get very angry. And I'm sure if we thought about other prophets that we read about, we would see this anger in the different ways in which the prophets challenged people. And if we consider the historical context of this first century world, honour and shame were important societal values. People would welcome those with honour and reject those who brought shame. Jesus would have left Nazareth being a certain kind of person and acting in a certain way that they were used to. He would have been seen as a good family contributor, someone with good standing in the community, someone who had favour, as we heard in Luke. He was a person of honour. But now Jesus returns to Nazareth, and he is potentially a whole other person, as he is being slowly revealed in Mark as the Son of God. The layers are peeling back to reveal who he truly is. And this is all demonstrated through his ministry and mission that they're all seeing in front of them. Yet in being who he is and doing what he does, Jesus disrupts the way his family and his community are used to experiencing him. And in their disruption and uncertainty, some accept him and some reject him. Is it possible that Jesus does this to all of us at some time, in some way? Is it possible that Jesus disrupts the expectations we carry for how we think life should be, and instead shows us the life that is possible in faith in God, the life that God truly wants for us? Jesus disrupts the comforts of our faith. He disrupts the safety and comfort of the hometowns that we can build around ourselves, the safe and comfortable patterns we adopt. And he does this to encourage us to see the possibility of what life could truly be when God is fully at our centre. And is it possible that there may be times when we might reject Jesus because changing to be who he needs us to be can be hard sometimes. It's much easier to do things the way we've always done them, to maintain the easiness of the status quo. It's easier and more comforting to sit in the comfort and safety of the hometowns that we've created around ourselves, some of which may be safe havens that we create, maybe to keep others away, or maybe to seek to maintain a sense of control, or perhaps to keep the peace with others. These hometowns may actually be quite insular and isolating because they separate us from others and create barriers against who we can truly be in the fullness of faith in God. Rather than provide relationship, which is the core of God's being, and Christ's teaching to love God and to love each other, these hometowns isolate and desolate and separate us. And we keep held up in our hometowns because the patterns are familiar. They've worked for us for so long. It's easier to close others out rather than perhaps being open and welcoming to let others in. whether they be the friend or the stranger. And we deny opportunities for Christ to speak into our lives, to disrupt that brings true transformation in our faith. Our faith can take us to places that are uncomfortable at times, places where we may face rejection, places where others may judge us even for our Christian faith, places that require us to leave the safety and comfort of our self-built hometowns. But Jesus was willing to go into uncomfortable spaces, and he encourages us in our faith to do the same. It may be easy to love our literal neighbour, for example, but is it so easy to love the stranger, the one who actually might need us the most? Perhaps we need to be more brave in our faith, more bold in our faith, which requires us to keep moving forward, just as Jesus went on healing. Jesus kept moving forward, and instead of letting the rejection take him, he decided to change things up. He was brave in his ministry by sending out his disciples, sharing his power and authority with them so that the work of ministry and mission could continue. There is more than one way to express our faith, and perhaps this more than one way may need us to be a little brave sometimes, to leave the safety and comfort of the hometowns that we may have created around ourselves, and to try different ways of being with God and with others, to take risks, perhaps to be vulnerable, to push the boundaries of sharing our faith. One of our parish family, and she's a little bit shy, I did talk to her during the week that I'd be talking about her, but Marilyn Wright, she's about to leave the comfort of her current hometown of Mount Gravatt and will embark on a journey of mission with Anglican Aid Abroad. She has a plan for her mission to visit multiple countries in Africa and visit the services for health, healing and church that Anglican Aid Abroad have established there, and she will provide encouragement to people working within those organisations. She will build relationships and connections and explore their hopes and needs for the future and for how Anglican Aid Abroad can help them ongoing. She is being very brave in how she goes out to love and serve the Lord. And I don't think any of us could pretend to know how Marilyn may be received as she reaches her different destinations. It may be just as Jesus was met in Nazareth, with a mix of feelings and receptions, some places where there is welcome, love and acceptance, and perhaps not in other places. Yet bravery comes in being willing to walk in the footsteps of Christ, in helping those most in need in our community, whether that's local or global. Now, we may not all be able nor ready to take as big a step outside our hometown as Marilyn, but perhaps there are smaller things we can do to step outside the comfort of our hometowns of faith. Perhaps it's as simple as looking at where the Spirit invites opportunities in the way that we might engage someone in conversation about God, or inviting someone to come along to church. Perhaps in sharing our time in other ways, whether here in the church or voluntarily within the local community. Whatever we do, may we look to what it is that Jesus is disrupting us to try, to not be limited by the confines of the hometowns that we may have created, but to go out and be brave in our faith.